My world shattered when I discovered the truth about my ex. But instead of falling apart, I meticulously crafted a plan that would change everything. You won't believe the lengths I went to for vindication, and trust me, it was worth every single moment. Stick around to see how I finally got the last laugh. My name is Serafina, but everyone calls me Sarah. For 3 years, I thought I was living in a fairy tale with my boyfriend, Blake Morrison. We met during our senior year of college when he literally bumped into me at the campus coffee shop, spilling my vanilla latte all over my economics textbook. His mortified expression and immediate offer to buy me a new drink and textbook was so endearing that I couldn't help but laugh. Blake was everything I thought I wanted in a partner. He was ambitious, working his way up at a prestigious marketing firm while I built my career as a graphic designer. We had this beautiful apartment overlooking the city, complete with matching furniture and coordinated throw pillows that screamed successful young couple. Our Instagram was a carefully curated collection of Sunday brunches, weekend getaways, and couples workout sessions that garnered hundreds of likes and comments like relationship goals, and when will it be my turn? We talked about marriage constantly. Blake would casually mention ring shopping when we passed jewelry stores, and we'd spend hours on Pinterest creating boards for our dream wedding. We even had names picked out for our future children, Ethan and Luna. Our 5-year plan was mapped out with military precision: engagement by year 4, wedding by year 5, house with a white picket fence by year 6. But looking back, the red flags were there, fluttering in the wind like warning signals I was too blinded by love to see. It started small. Blake began working late more frequently, always with perfectly reasonable explanations. Big client presentation coming up, babe. He'd text around 9 p.m. when I'd ask when he was coming home. His phone, which used to lie casually on countertops, suddenly became an extension of his hand. He'd take it to the bathroom, keep it face down during dinner, and I noticed he'd started using a passcode when he never had one before. The most telling change was in our intimacy. Blake, who used to be affectionate and spontaneous, became distant and mechanical. Our conversations shifted from dreams and inside jokes to logistics about groceries and bills. When I'd try to initiate deeper conversations about us, he'd deflect with work stress or redirect the conversation to something mundane. The final red flag should have been the new cologne. Blake had worn the same woody, masculine scent for our entire relationship. It was his signature smell that I associated with comfort and home. Suddenly, he was wearing something floral and light, completely unlike him. When I commented on it, he claimed his usual brand was discontinued and this was a temporary replacement. The lie rolled off his tongue so smoothly that I almost believed it. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a rainy Thursday in October, the kind of night that makes you want to curl up with takeout and Netflix. Blake had texted earlier saying he'd be home late again, another emergency client meeting. I was designing a logo for a local bakery when his laptop, which he'd left open on our dining table, chimed with a notification. I glanced over, intending to close it so the sound wouldn't distract me, when I saw a message preview that made my blood run cold. It was from someone named a Redheart and it read, "Can't wait to see you tonight, handsome. We're that cologne I bought you." The world tilted on its axis. My hands trembled as I clicked on the message thread, and what I found was 3 months of flirtatious texts, explicit photos, and planning secret meetups. The woman's name was Anastasia Chen, and from her profile picture, she was stunning, long black hair, perfect makeup, and a smile that could light up a room. She worked at Blake's company, in the PR department. The messages painted a picture of a relationship that had been going on parallel to ours. They had inside jokes, plans for weekend trips I knew nothing about, and worst of all, Blake had been using the same pet names with her that he used with me. He called us both his sunshine. The cologne she'd mentioned? She'd bought it for him because she said it reminded her of their first kiss. I sat in our apartment, surrounded by the life we'd built together, and felt like I was drowning in betrayal. The throw pillows suddenly looked ridiculous, the couple's photos on our mantel felt like mockeries, and our 5-year plan crumbled into dust. But here's the thing about discovering betrayal: after the initial shock and heartbreak, something else can emerge. For me, it was a cold, calculating anger that demanded justice. Instead of confronting Blake immediately, I made a decision that would define the next several weeks of my life. I was going to gather evidence. Not just a few text messages, but an entire portfolio of his deception that would be impossible to deny or minimize. I started by taking screenshots of every message on his laptop. Blake had foolishly set his messages to sync across all his devices, so while he was careful with his phone, his laptop was a treasure trove of information. I discovered they'd been meeting at a boutique hotel downtown every Thursday, the same night he claimed to have his recurring emergency client meetings. My detective work became methodical and consuming. I installed a GPS tracker app on his car using his own Apple ID. He'd given me the password months ago for downloading music to my phone. I created fake social media accounts to monitor Anastasia's online activity. I even befriended a girl from Blake's office, Emma, through a mutual friend, casually asking about office dynamics and relationships. What I discovered was worse than I'd initially thought. Blake and Anastasia weren't just having an affair, they were planning their own future together. She'd posted vacation photos from a weekend trip to Napa Valley, the same weekend Blake had told me he was visiting his sick grandmother in Portland. In the photos, you could see Blake's reflection in her sunglasses. They'd been looking at apartments together, and in one particularly devastating message thread, Blake had told her he was just waiting for the right time to end things with Sarah. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. I wasn't just being cheated on, I was being actively deceived and planned to be discarded like an outdated piece of furniture. But the final straw came when I discovered that Blake had been using our joint credit card to pay for their hotel rooms, dinners, and even jewelry for Anastasia. He'd bought her a necklace, a delicate gold chain with a small diamond pendant, that cost more than I'd spent on my car. Meanwhile, he'd been making excuses about money being tight whenever I suggested we do something special together. 3 weeks into my investigation, I had enough evidence to ruin Blake's life 10 times over. Screenshots, credit card statements, GPS location data, and even a few photos I'd taken of him entering and leaving the hotel with Anastasia. I'd documented everything with the precision of a forensic investigator. The confrontation happened on a Thursday night, their usual meet-up night. Instead of my usual routine of staying home, I followed Blake to the hotel. I watched from my car as he walked in at 7:30 p.m., carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing that floral cologne that now made me sick. I waited 2 hours before entering the hotel myself. I'd called ahead and confirmed they were in room 412 under Anastasia's name. Using a story about being Blake's sister with an emergency, I convinced the front desk to give me a key card. Standing outside their door, I could hear them laughing inside. Blake's laugh, the same laugh I'd fallen in love with, now being shared with someone else in our secret world. I used the key card and walked in. The scene was exactly what you'd expect and somehow worse. They were on the couch in hotel bathrobes, sharing champagne and feeding each other chocolate-covered strawberries like some cliched romantic movie. Blake's face went white when he saw me. Anastasia screamed and grabbed a pillow to cover herself. "Sarah, I can explain," Blake started, but I held up my hand. "Don't," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Just don't." Anastasia looked between us, finally understanding who I was. "Oh my God, Blake, you said you were single. You said you'd never been in a serious relationship." The lie hit me like a slap. Not only had he been cheating, but he'd been erasing me entirely from his narrative. 3 years, I said to Anastasia, my voice hollow. We've been together for 3 years. We lived together. We were planning to get married. The room fell silent except for the sound of the hotel's air conditioning. Blake looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Anastasia's face crumpled as she realized she'd been lied to as well. I turned to leave, but Blake grabbed my arm. "Sarah, please, let me explain. This isn't what it looks like." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. the man I'd loved, the man I'd planned a future with, was gone. In his place was a coward who'd been living a double life for months. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said, pulling my arm free. "But don't worry, Blake. This isn't over. Not by a long shot." I left that hotel room with my heart broken, but my resolve stronger than steel. Blake had spent months planning his deception, and now it was my turn to plan something spectacular. The first part of my plan was simple: let Blake think he'd gotten away with it. When he came home that night, I pretended to be asleep. The next morning, I acted normal, making coffee, talking about weekend plans, being the girlfriend he'd been taking for granted. Blake seemed relieved by my apparent acceptance, probably assuming I was too heartbroken or too dependent on him to cause trouble. He had no idea what was coming. I enlisted my best friend, Zoe, and my brother, Marcus, I know, different Marcus, as my co-conspirators. Zoe was a paralegal with access to private investigators and legal resources. Marcus worked in IT and had skills that would prove invaluable for the digital aspects of my plan. My revenge had 3 phases, each designed to systematically dismantle the life Blake had built on lies. Phase 1, the professional destruction. Through Emma, my contact at Blake's office, I learned that Blake's company had a strict fraternization policy, especially regarding relationships between different departments that could create conflicts of interest. Blake, as a senior account manager, was technically Anastasia's superior in the company hierarchy. Their relationship was not only against company policy but could open the company to sexual harassment liability issues. I compiled a comprehensive dossier of their relationship, time-stamped photos of them entering and leaving the hotel, credit card records showing Blake paying for their meetings, and screenshots of their text messages discussing work projects in intimate terms that suggested their personal relationship was affecting their professional judgment. But I didn't send it to HR immediately. That would be too obvious and easily traced back to me. Instead, I waited for the perfect moment. Phase 2, the social devastation. Blake was incredibly image-conscious. His social media presence was carefully curated to show him as successful, trustworthy, and relationship-oriented. He regularly posted about loyalty, integrity, and finding the one. His friends and family adored him, and he'd positioned himself as the guy who didn't understand how people could cheat in their friend group. I created a detailed timeline of Blake's affair alongside his social media posts about love and loyalty. The juxtaposition was damning. On the same day he'd posted about being grateful for an honest relationship, he'd spent $300 on a hotel room with Anastasia. Phase 3, the financial reckoning. Blake had been stealing from our relationship, using our joint credit card for his affair, lying about expenses, and planning to leave me with the financial burden of our shared apartment and commitments. I documented every fraudulent expense and prepared to ensure he'd be held accountable for every penny. The execution began 2 weeks after I'd discovered their affair. Blake was still meeting with Anastasia, still lying to my face, still planning his exit strategy. He'd even had the audacity to suggest we take a break from talking about marriage because he was feeling overwhelmed with work stress. I started with the financial phase. I removed my portion of money from our joint account and opened my own accounts. I gathered all documentation showing Blake's misuse of our shared credit cards and prepared to file a complaint with the credit card company for fraudulent charges. Then came the social media component. I didn't post anything dramatic or emotional. Instead, I created a simple, factual post with the evidence timeline. No name-calling, no emotional language, just dates, photos, and facts. While Blake Morrison was posting about loyalty and honesty, here's what he was actually doing. I tagged him and uploaded it across all my social media platforms, making sure his friends and family could see exactly who he really was. But the professional component required perfect timing. The perfect moment came during Blake's company's quarterly review meeting. Through Emma, I knew this was when performance evaluations were conducted and when the company made decisions about promotions and account assignments. Blake had been up for a promotion to senior partner level, a position that would have elevated his career significantly. I sent my carefully compiled dossier to the company's HR department, the legal department, and the CEO, all simultaneously, at 9 a.m. on the morning of Blake's review. The email was professional and factual, expressing concern about potential policy violations and liability issues for the company. I didn't have to wait long for the fallout to begin. By 11 a.m., my social media post had been shared dozens of times. Blake's phone was ringing constantly. His friends and family were commenting with shock and disbelief. His carefully constructed image was crumbling in real time. Blake came home at 2 p.m., hours earlier than usual. I was working on my laptop, pretending not to notice the panic in his eyes. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said, his voice shaky. "About what?" I asked innocently, not looking up from my screen. "You know what? The post. The emails to my work. This is insane." I finally looked at him, and I saw a broken man. His hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "What's insane, Blake? You're trying to ruin my life." "I'm not trying to do anything," I said calmly. "I'm simply sharing the truth. Isn't honesty important in relationships?" His face crumpled. "They fired me, Sarah. And Anastasia. They fired both of us. I'm probably going to get blacklisted in the industry. My family won't even talk to me. My mom called me crying, asking how she raised such a liar." For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy I used to have for him. But then I remembered the months of deception, the stolen money, the complete erasure of our relationship in his narrative with Anastasia. "You did this to yourself, Blake," I said. "Every single consequence you're facing is the direct result of your own choices." "But why?" he asked, and I could see genuine confusion in his eyes. "Why go this far? Why not just break up with me?" The question revealed how little he understood about the depth of his betrayal. He thought this was about jealousy or a broken heart. He didn't understand that this was about justice. "Because you didn't just cheat on me," I explained. "You systematically lied to me for months. You stole from me. You made me complicit in my own deception by using our shared resources to fund your affair. You erased 3 years of our relationship to make your lies easier. And you were planning to discard me like I never mattered." The truth of his actions seemed to hit him all at once. He sat down heavily on our couch, the same couch where we'd planned our future together. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry, Sarah." "I know you are," I said. "But sorry doesn't undo the damage. Sorry doesn't give me back the months I spent being unknowingly humiliated. Sorry doesn't return the money you stole or rebuild the trust you destroyed." Over the next few days, I watched the complete collapse of Blake's carefully constructed life. The story had spread beyond our social circle, someone had shared it on Reddit, and it had gained traction as a cautionary tale about infidelity. Local news outlets picked it up as an example of how social media was changing the way people handled relationship betrayals. Anastasia had reached out to me through Instagram, apologizing profusely and explaining that Blake had told her he was single. She'd been just as deceived as I had been, and she was facing her own professional and social consequences. I felt sympathy for her, she'd been lied to as well, but I also felt vindicated that the truth was finally exposed. Blake's friends started reaching out to me, many apologizing for not seeing through his deception and expressing their support. His family, who had always treated me like a daughter, were devastated by his betrayal and made it clear they still considered me family. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came when I received a message from Blake's ex-girlfriend from college. She said my post had given her the courage to speak out about how Blake had cheated on her too, and she'd realized his behavior was a pattern, not an aberration. In the weeks following the explosive revelation, something unexpected happened. I felt empty. The satisfaction I'd anticipated from my revenge was fleeting, replaced by a complex mix of emotions I hadn't prepared for. Don't get me wrong, I didn't regret exposing Blake's lies. The truth needed to come out, and the consequences he faced were entirely of his own making. But I realized that revenge, no matter how perfectly executed, couldn't undo the damage that had been done to my ability to trust or erase the months of humiliation I'd endured. The healing process was slow and complicated. I started therapy to work through the betrayal trauma and to understand why I'd missed so many red flags. Dr. Sarah Chin, no relation to Anastasia, thankfully, helped me recognize that my need for the perfect relationship had made me ignore my instincts in favor of maintaining an illusion. You were so invested in the story you were telling about your relationship that you couldn't see the reality, she explained during one of our sessions. The revenge gave you back a sense of control, but real healing comes from understanding your own patterns and rebuilding your sense of self-worth. She was right. I'd been so focused on being the perfect girlfriend, on maintaining our perfect image, that I'd lost myself in the process. I'd ignored my own needs and instincts to preserve a relationship that was already broken. The months that followed became a journey of rediscovery. I threw myself into my design work with renewed passion, landing several high-profile clients and finally launching the freelance business I'd been talking about for years but had never pursued because Blake thought it was too risky. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my relationship with Blake, rediscovering parts of my personality that had been dormant. I remembered how much I loved hiking, something Blake had always considered too outdoorsy. I took a pottery class and discovered I had a natural talent for it. I traveled alone for the first time in my adult life, taking a solo trip to Ireland that became a transformative experience of independence and self-reliance. Most importantly, I learned to trust my instincts again. I recognized that my gut feelings about Blake's behavior had been accurate. I'd simply chosen to ignore them in favor of maintaining our perfect relationship narrative. 6 months after the revenge, Blake reached out to me one final time. He'd moved back to his hometown, taken a job with a smaller company at a significant pay cut, and was in therapy working on his own issues. His message was long and thoughtful, taking full responsibility for his actions and acknowledging the depth of pain he'd caused. He didn't ask for forgiveness or for another chance. He simply wanted me to know that he understood the magnitude of his betrayal and that he was working to become a better person. He ended by saying that while he regretted losing me, he was grateful that his actions had ultimately led me to find my own strength and independence. I appreciated the message, but I didn't respond. Some chapters in life need to close completely to allow new ones to begin. A year after the revenge, I met David at a coffee shop, ironically, the same coffee shop where Blake and I had first met. David was kind, honest, and emotionally available in ways that Blake had never been. More importantly, I was different. I was stronger, more self-aware, and unwilling to compromise my instincts for the sake of maintaining an illusion. Our relationship developed slowly and authentically. I was upfront about my past betrayal and my trust issues. David was patient and understanding, never pressuring me to move faster than I was comfortable with. He earned my trust through consistent actions over time, rather than grand gestures or smooth words. Now, 2 years later, I can honestly say that Blake's betrayal, as painful as it was, ultimately led me to a better life. Not because revenge is healing, it isn't, but because the experience forced me to confront my own patterns and rebuild my sense of self-worth from the ground up. I learned that I didn't need to be in the perfect relationship to be worthy of love. I learned that my instincts are trustworthy and that I should never ignore red flags for the sake of maintaining an illusion. Most importantly, I learned that my worth isn't determined by someone else's ability to see it. The revenge gave me a temporary sense of justice, but the real victory came from rebuilding my life into something authentic and fulfilling. I'm now running a successful design business. I'm in a healthy relationship with someone who values honesty and communication, and I have a strong support network of friends and family who genuinely care about my well-being. Blake's betrayal was devastating, but it also revealed my own resilience and strength. The woman who discovered those text messages was heartbroken and lost. The woman I am today is confident, independent, and unafraid to stand up for herself. Sometimes the most painful experiences in life are also the most transformative. Blake thought he was discarding me, but instead, he freed me to become the person I was always meant to be. And that's a victory no revenge could ever achieve.